Today, we'll be going through procurement automation using Coupa and NetSuite. The goals for today's demonstration are to firstly, automate the procure to order process involving Coupa and NetSuite while minimizing manual entry processes. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Coupa is basically a spend management tool, a cloud-based spend management tool, and they have an API that we can connect to. And NetSuite is also a cloud-based ERP solution that you can use to keep track of your POs, invoices, receipts, suppliers, and items. So the second goal of today's session is also to allow us to synchronize data between our systems. So we want to make sure that the POs that we create in Coupa are synchronized with the POs in NetSuite. The invoices in NetSuite are synchronized with the invoices created by the supplier, and so on. Okay, moving on. Here's the workflow that we'll be following for the integration process. Firstly, we'll start off with an employee making a requisition. So a requisition is like, an employee just purchasing a headset on like Coupa. So they can just click on the quantity of headsets that they want and then add it to a cart and then create the requisition from there. Once the requisition is approved by their supervisor, Coupa will actually proceed to convert their requisition into a purchase order. And once that happens, Workato is going to detect that PO creation event and then move that into the NetSuite ERP and also transfer the information into the supplier's database, which in this case we'll be using Quickbase. So once those processes are done, and the item is actually received by the company in Coupa, that creates a item receipt event in Coupa. We will actually detect that event in Workato and move data about that receipt event into NetSuite, right? And on the other side, on the supplier side, when the supplier actually receives the PO, he can go ahead and create an invoice and generate an invoice, and Workato will also pick up that event through our native Quickbase integration, and we will also go ahead and create that particular invoice in the ERP. So finally, now in the ERP, in the NetSuite ERP, we'll have item receipts, POs, and invoices, and they're all linked together. So the last step that's left to do is that maybe you can have a finance manager in the company going into the ERP and making payment on the invoice in the ERP. And finally, once payment has been made on that invoice, Workato is going to pick up the event and proceed to close the purchase order in Coupa. So essentially, that's how the workflow is going to flow. So just to recap, the apps that we'll be using today will be firstly Workato, which we are using to, orchestrate the entire integration, build out all the recipes, do all the conditional actions, check that the data is correct. And we'll be using NetSuite, which is like the company's ERP. So that's where they store all their finance information, like invoices, POs, receipts, suppliers, items, stuff like that. And Coupa will be used as the spend management tool. So basically, employees will log into Coupa and make all the necessary purchases that they need to, complete their projects. And lastly, we'll also be connecting with Quickbase, and in this case, the supplier is basically using Quickbase to store a record of their purchase orders and invoices. All right, so without further ado, let's move on into the demo. All right, okay, so let's begin our demonstration now. So on the screen on the right, I have Coupa opened, and on the screen to the left, I have NetSuite open. And so we're going to kick off this demonstration with firstly creating a requisition in Coupa, and we're going to purchase headsets. So we're going to start first with clicking on Choose and IT from the home screen in Coupa. And once we are inside the IT screen, we are going to select Plantronics wireless headset, and we're going to say that we want to purchase 10 pieces of this headset. So we're going to add this to the cart, and we are going to review the cart. So now we have to basically specify a shipping address so that the system knows where we want to send these items to. Maybe let's select somewhere in this place, and let's select a billing account to bill to. So let's select company 1, and for the region, maybe let's say central and finance department. And for the account, let's say it's an asset, so we'll move into the assets account and click choose. So once this happens, Coupa is going to go ahead and create the PO, right? And we need to actually firstly submit the PO for submit this requisition for approval. So let's click on submit. Okay, so the requisition 5823 has been created and submitted for approval. So now what we want to do is to go back into the requisition here, and we can pretend that the requisition has been approved and just bypass the approvals and order the item. All right. So now if we go back into our orders, we can see that there is a new PO that's created. So let's wait for it to load. Yep. Here we see that PO 5808 has just been issued, and the order is for 10 pieces of the Plantronics wireless headset for 2,399.9 US dollars. So if I go into NetSuite now and I refresh the page in NetSuite, I should see that yes, it's here. So the purchase order, so in NetSuite we are basically using the external ID column to store the ID of the PO in Coupa. So here we can see that 5808 is here, which is also there in Coupa. So if we click on this PO in NetSuite and view it, we will see that we basically have like 10 items and at the cost of 239.99 per item. So the total cost is 2,399.9. And if we click on the item name, the item ID, sorry, we can see that the item display name is Plantronic. So this is exactly the same as what we have in Coupa, right? So all right, so like as described in our workflow earlier, this when you create a PO in Coupa, this PO will be pushed into NetSuite, and it will also be pushed into Quickbase, which is like what the supplier uses to keep track of his purchase orders, and to also issue invoices. So if we go into Quickbase and we open up the purchase orders app that we have, and we do a quick refresh, and we do a search for PO 5808, we will see that there is one PO here with an ID from Coupa of 5808. So what we want to do is that next, you know, now that we know that the PO is actually inside Quickbase, we can proceed to the next step, right? Which is to receive the items in Coupa. So now the supplier has received the PO. He is going to fulfill the PO and send the items to the customer, and the customer now needs to receive these items. So the way you're going to receive an item is to go into the receive tab in Coupa. So go to inventory and click on receive. And I'm going to do a quick refresh here so that we will see our latest PO 5808. So I'm going to go to 5808. Yes, it's there, and it's for 2,399.9. We're just going to do a quick receipt. So we receive all the items, all 10 headsets. Scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to receive it to inventory, right? And we're going to say that it's for, let's put in the IT storage room in USA, because that's where the items are supposed to be stored. And we're going to click save. Okay, so the items have been received in Coupa, and according to our workflow, the next thing that's supposed to happen is that these received items are actually supposed to be moved over into NetSuite as item receipts. So if I go into NetSuite and I refresh the item receipts page, I'll actually see that I have received some Plantronics items here. So I click view. Yeah, and I'll see that I've received 10 Plantronics items, right, in a particular location in USA. So the item receipts have been synced over. So now that the customer has received the items, the supplier can go ahead and create the invoice to charge the customer for the items that he's received. So I'm going to pretend that I'm the supplier now. I'm going to go into my purchase orders app, and I'm going to add an invoice to this particular PO in Coupa. So I'm going to click add invoice. All right, gonna click save and close. So I've just created an invoice, linked it to the PO in Quickbase. And now Workato is actually going to detect this event, and based on this event, we're going to go ahead and create the relevant bill in NetSuite. So now if I go to NetSuite, bills, the bills tab, and I do a quick refresh, I should see that I have a new bill here that's just been created, this one. So it is open and it's not been paid yet. So I'm going to click view to view the bill. And I'm going to make payment on this bill, right? I'm gonna select the correct bill and click save. It's gonna ask me for some information, but because this is a demonstration, you're just gonna click OK. All right, transaction has been successfully saved. So now if I go back into NetSuite and I go into the purchases and I look at the purchase order that was created, you'll see that the status has now changed. So go into purchase orders and I view this purchase order. It'll say that it has been fully billed, right? So we've completely paid for it. And if we now go into Coupa and go into the orders and I refresh this, you should see that PO number 5808 is now in the closed state. So the entire integration workflow is complete. Okay, we have come to the end of this session. Please reach out to our customer success team at support@workato.com if you have any further questions. Thanks for your attention and have a great day.